Hello and welcome to India Today. I am Sanjay Ponnappa, joined by co-hosts Maruti Acharya and Janani. Both are from different states. We are here to represent the diversity of cinemas in South India. We are going to be talking about everything that happened in cinema in 2024, starting with Malayalam cinema, which arguably had a lot of successes in the year when we compare it to the other industries in South India. With that, let's start the show. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you guys? The year has ended and cinemas have also ended
Hi
for the year.
Sanjay. So this year was actually mixed bag for me personally. Like I watched a bunch of Tamil, Malayalam, and Telugu films, a few Kannada as well. But then for me, this year was a mixed bag. Like whatever films that I expected to do well didn't do well, and the ones that I had like least expectations surprised me as well. Um, so coming to Malayalam industry. This year, I would say truly belonged to Malayalam cinema because it just kept belting out one hit after another, right from Premalu, Manjummel Boys, Avesham, and even if you take the recent Rifle Club, Marco, even though they are not in big numbers, they're still like solid with the reviews and all that. So I would suggest that this year was a milestone for Malayalam cinema. Um, and similarly, the big budget films where it starred Nivin Pauly, whether it's Malayali from India or Malakote Valiban, Burrows, these are all some of the most expected films. With Malayali from India, they expected Nivin Pauly to actually have a good comeback. But then sadly, all these films did not find its audience and then failed to actually like rake in numbers at the box office level as well.
Okay, Maruti, what do you think? How was the year for you overall? Start.
Overall, this year was definitely a very unexpected year. That is from all the industries. Take Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, especially Malayalam for me, because Malayalam cinema, I have been personally rooting because I'll give you a small example about Jallikattu, how in PVR, when I was in Hyderabad back then, it had a very limited release and like what, 2 days or 3 days, but it was talked about and cinephiles are talking about the movie, so we wanted the movie to be released. So a lot of times with Malayalam movies, that is what happens. So this year, I am really happy because Malayalam movies not just success, it also got the reach. Not just in Kerala, people outside Kerala also got access to watch Malayalam cinema in theaters, and that reflected on numbers also, which gave hope to industry. So in that sense, I think it has been really good to Malayalam cinema.
Also, another thing to notice in Malayalam cinema is that how all the biggest hitters were all small budget films. Even if you take the likes of Avesham, considerably a little more than the usual Malayalam films, but still, if you consider overall in Indian cinema, all these films are something that has a very small budget and yet managed to hit big. So, what's your take on this, Janani?
True, like all the small budget films, let it be like Parvati and Urvashi's Ullurukku, or there's this Malayalam anthology called Her. Even though it didn't have a theatrical release, all these films are all like rooted and then like made on a very concise budget. But then they went on to have strong content, which is why they have the reach as they have right now. And I feel this is also to do with the story and how they actually marketed it to reach out to the audience as well. Because films like ARM, which is Tovino Thomas's period film, like it was marketed as a pan India release, but then even though it had like many elements to like appreciate about, but then it did not have an overall. I mean, it did not come across as an overall entertainer, is what I felt. Same happened with Malakote Valiban and Burrows as well. Malakote Valiban was actually looked upon because it marked the first collaboration of Lijo Jose Pellicerri and Mohanlal. So it was one of the biggest entertainers that people expected to connect to, but then it actually reached out, but to a very niche audience and not to the entire mass audience as expected.
Well, Maruti, what's your comments on this?
The big budget movies that released this year were quite disappointing. I personally liked Malaikote Valiban. I really enjoyed the movie for the themes, what it is trying to do. Because in usual the pan India movies, especially when you take pan India, right, there is certain kind of template presentation. These are the tick boxes that the movie should satisfy. So Malaikote Valiban comes with a very unconventional point and a very psychologically hitting point that will make you think. And technically, visually stunning also, it has that packed theatrical experience. But that again, it is all about how you pitch the movie. I think not just in Malayalam industry, I see that trend in other movies also, especially all these pan-India pitch movies. Why are the small budget movies working? Is because of the way they pitch. From the get-go, they are made on a stringline budgets, and the characters are more relatable. There is more story for you to drive that film. But when it comes to pan India, right, it is very important for you to set the right expectations of what are you entering the movie. Because if you look at Malaikote Valiban's trailer or ARM's trailer, I feel like the promotional campaigns of those movies did disservice to the actual product itself. So you trained your, especially with Malaikote Valiban, the way they have hyped up the movie, I think that really backfired. The movie is not an underwhelming product, but because the way they've hyped it up is why you think it is something else. And because Malayalam cinema has been in conversations about not being able to give this pan India cinema and all those kind of conversations, they actually tried something unconventional. So again, those check marks were rejected by Malayalam audience because you have to understand what is the reason why there is a structure in that industry, right? So all these calculations went wrong. That's why I personally feel the big budget movies didn't work.
Another thing to notice here is that how all the films in Malayalam cinema has been getting more reach in recent times, especially after the pandemic. People have been raving about Malayalam cinema because of the many films that they produce, which is so content driven and content oriented. Even recently, we heard Anurag Kashyap speak about how he wanted to be in a Malayalam film and he managed to get himself one with Rifle Club. And then we also heard Mohanlal's interview where he said that it is a responsibility now that we produce good content because everybody is watching us and that the audience needs to develop this habit of watching so many films. So, Janani, you tell me, what do you feel about this phenomenon of Malayalam cinema opening up to the rest of the country and everybody having their eyes on it?
During the COVID days, that is when Malayalam cinema peaked for everybody, whether it's Fahad Fasil's films or Mohanlal films. Everybody, like, since they were all glued to the OTT channels, people were actually like opening up to Malayalam cinema. And this year truly like presented them such diverse films as well. Like you take the national award winning Atom, for example. It released in 2023 December, but then it didn't have a like that bigger release back then. And then when it released again in the OTT, or when it was re-released in January, that is when people actually like lapped up the film and then like understood how important that film was for women and for everybody else who are like working with women. That like that there are so many other films. So and I saw a lot of films this year, for example, Premalo, Manjummel Boys, Avesham, and right now Rifle Club and Marco. These are all the films that actually like transcended from Kerala and had releases in other languages as well, concentrating on the dubbing because it needs to reach to another section of audience is something that I see as a big reach for Malayalam cinema.
Right. Maruti, what's your take on this?
Definitely, the attempts from the side of industry has considerably increased, and all thanks to OTT and stuff. There's a lot of talking happening about Malayalam cinema in general. So now what happened is that, see, with KGF and Kantara, what happened is that they were not initially dubbed into or released. So the talk and the demand for the movie is what created the release and hysteria, even Pushpa for that matter. So this has been the trend, and 2024 is the year for that break point of Malayalam cinema. So it's that break-even point where there is equal demand, and overall they created that impact that, yes, even if our movies, irrespective of the language and the setup, if you release in your language, it will work. Looking at the demand, and producers, I think this year distributors from other language also took that leap of faith, and then they took that step to release these movies, and that's how the results also reflect that. And another thing is Malayalam cinema, which not a lot of people are talking about, is the experience, the big auditorium experience, watching it with people. The cinematic experience is something that is very, very important for you to get the tickets sold. Malayalam cinema has figured out a niche way of getting that done. Not like a magnum opus experience, but like Sukshma Darshini is one such example. I would like to say that it is a very simple movie if you look at it. But trust me, if you watch it with audience in the auditorium, the experience itself is so memorable. So if you look at the Pan India movies and Sukshma Darshini, or for that matter, Bramayugam or Manjummel Boys, they are technically brilliant. 2018 is another example. So they are not exactly trying to replicate the existing model to building a world or something. They are giving their life, their stories only, but catering to the auditorium experience. So I think they've cracked that and promoted it well. I think that is the reason why they are able to reach this big. One more point is King of Kotha, for example. That is a proper, like, let's take a formula and make kind of a movie. So that didn't work. So the difference is evident.
While in 2024, Malayalam cinema made a lot of sound. Another thing that made even more sound nationwide is the Hema Committee report, again, arising from the Malayalam film industry. So, Janani, you tell us what's your take on the whole incident? How did it affect the film industry on a whole? What was the Hema Committee report?
So I'm not sure how much effect it had on the industry, but then like in terms of films, but then it definitely should have and must have had an effect on how the industry is functioning from within. So this is a very welcoming change that I see in the industry, because people are actually coming out, especially women. They're coming out with their stories and then saying no to the exploitation anymore, because this committee report actually exposed the many cases of sexual abuse, sexual harassment, pay disparity, casting couch, and then lobbying. A lot of what we might not think of Malayalam cinema looking at just the content that is coming out. But then this came as a shocker to many who actually don't follow Malayalam cinema that closely. But then this is one of the reports that will propel people to actually bring certain regulations in how the industry is functioning from within.
Right. Maruti, what's your take on this?
I completely agree with whatever Janani has mentioned, because the implications of it are something that we have to see on ground level. How much of the report coming out and the conversations that happened are really impactful on ground level, because there are a lot of interviews where actor has also mentioned, when something like this happens, there are repercussions also. Like, going forward as one way, and sometimes it might take back also, because the structure is such. So that is yet to see. But again, every time there's something like that, the conversation is the most important thing. And the SEMA committee report raised some important questions about a lot of things that are not just restricted to Malayalam industry. If you look at it, it is in every industry, every film industry, and every sector where people work. So I pray that it reflects on ground as well.
Yes, that was a really good point that you made, that how because of the Hema committee report, it sparked a lot of conversations in all the neighboring industries as well, and how every industry wanted a committee for women's safety after this particular incident broke out into the big scene. And that again is a good scene. It's a conversation that needs to happen everywhere, because safety has been a point of conversation over the years for the longest time, but then it hasn't really gotten any particular conclusion or solution till date. So this is something that is very important, and that was a great point to bring up. Now let's move on to the big money-making industry of the country, which is Telugu cinema. Well, again, two biggest films of the year, box office wise, has been from Telugu cinema, which is Pushpa 2 and Kalki. And Pushpa 2 is still running very strongly in the theaters, although it is embroiled in a lot of controversy that hasn't slowed down the numbers that it is making at the box office. So let's talk about Telugu cinema. How was the year overall? Let's start with Maruti Acharya. This is your home turf. This is your home ground. So tell us, how was Telugu cinema in 2024 for you?
films. There's a lot of money that in terms of collections that the Telugu industry had made this year, which is good in general industry. 2,000 crore movies is a very big deal because like year ago that was 1,000 crores is a very big number. Now it seems very achievable, right? So that's one good thing. But for me personally, what I like about Telugu cinema is there is a constant trend of content driven small budget movies which are actually getting theatrical run, especially when we are talking about this whole OTT mode and movies being boxed for OTT. There are movies like Committee Kurollu, even Lucky Bhaskar for that matter. The like last year there was Balagam. Now there are more movies where it is about content and fresh filmmakers, fresh voices. There's another movie, Swag. I don't know the movie. I wanted the movie to work more. It didn't, but I still feel it is a really good movie in terms of attempt execution. For the people who are watching this, I think you should definitely add it to your recommendation list. So these kind of voices, different topics and representations are actually increased. I am not saying that, it's like, yeah, drastic change, but the steps are clearly visible, and the important part is audience are supportive. Now audience are also choosing these kind of cinema, which is a very happy and fruitful sign, especially for somebody like me.
Janani, you tell us, how was Telugu films for you in 2024?
For me, it was more about, as Maruti said, it was more about these small budget films, like hitting the right notes for me. Be it, Saripodas Anywhere is not a small budget film though, but then be it 35 or Tillu Square for that matter. These are all the films that really, struck the chord with me. I really loved watching these films. The big budget films were also good, but then not as impressive as these content driven films that came out this year.
On the contrary side, for me, Telugu films are mostly about the presentation and how good that comes out, because I feel like Telugu cinema has cracked that formula to do it right, to present your actors very nicely, mostly when compared to all the other cinemas. So, in that matter, I felt like this year, although we have the biggest names and the biggest films of the year is from Telugu cinema, I felt like that lacked in for most films this year. Although there are a lot of films that churned out, and yes, smaller films got a lot of recognition and well deserved recognition, but at the same time, the bigger films and the bigger stars also failed in most attempts. And that is also something to talk about. One important thing is the repeated use of cliffhangers and sequels, especially in Telugu cinema and the bigger films, with the bigger stars. So, Maruti, you tell me, how was that? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing that they are going for sequels again and again and again and again and again?
I can give my opinion regarding this because I am surprised how these movies, despite of the forced cliffhangers, they are making those numbers. So we can't talk about audience in general because the response is all mixed. So I personally feel all these cliffhanger movies, especially that came recently, are forced and it is not working out because see, take Bahubali for that matter, in any movie, that movie standalone has given its experience properly. You're not unsatisfied with the product, or leading it up. Even Kanguva for that matter, even though it's not Telugu, but the point is same. First, you satisfy us with this and say there is more to this. That is when people will come. I think, including Pushpa too, they were all these movies had the same problem. You're not happy with the first one. Why will you come and watch the next one? Is the question. And the good thing is that how one of the acclaimed producer Nagavamshi, a way addressed this recently while talking about VD12 update. He said that the first part itself will be fully, satisfying. So that clearly shows even the industry understood that people, this is the factor that is actually affecting audience. You should fill this first installment properly if you're expecting another installment.
Janani, what about you? Because I felt like most of the films which, opened a door for a sequel were films that were actually a single film, but then the screenplay was diluted and written into two parts. What
Yes.
is your take? Did you also feel the same? What did you feel about this whole cliffhanger ending for so many films, especially in Telugu cinema?
So I actually go with what Maruti says. See, be it Pushpa or Devara, a sequel should actually take the story forward. But then it remains stagnant for most of the part because there is not much meat in it. You have so much mass elements, or you focus so much on the characters. I understand if there is depth depth to those characters. But then if there is not enough depth, and then you struggle to take the story forward with whatever you have, then you see, I mean, you just keep repeating the same point over and over again, making this, which makes the story redundant, whether it's Devara or Pushpa and even Kanguva for that matter, because they are not propelling the story forward. Instead, they are just reiterating what is already told and what is already known for us.
Again, but still these films manage to make big numbers. Why? Because of the fan following that it has, the mass appeal that it has. So what do you think about the fan wars that happens here? Because it, even during the whole campaign of Pushpa, it is very evident that it is facing a negative force as well. While there is a lot of following, the negative force is also there. Same thing happens with Prabhas. Same thing happens with lot of other stars. Even with Devara, there was a lot of, negative trolls that came towards Devara from a particular fan base. There has been very evident fan wars that is happening. So, what's your take on this? Let's start with Janani.
I feel this year was more of just fans proving that my hero is bigger, your hero is not. They are just indulging in, like, mudslinging on the X platform or any other platform for that matter. Take a look at the YouTube comments and you will know like how people are like just pitching their heroes against each other. And I feel so many of the directors and producers and the actors have actually openly come out this year to tell people not to concentrate on box office numbers, because those numbers are just for the producers, because they are the ones who are investing in the business. You just concentrate on the what we are offering to you on the big screen. Even when a film announcement comes out, whether you watch the product and judge it, it doesn't matter. It's just your hero is there, so you will do whatever it needs from your end. It's a very skewed way of thinking from fans' perspective, and I hope that people going forward, people actually step back from this.
Very nice point that you said that your hero is bigger, my hero is bigger. All of a sudden, I remembered the song from Upendra's recently released film, UI, which basically talks about this. The name of the song is Cheap Song. So, for people who don't know
Ah.
the context, the song is out. Go check it out as well. But it also speaks about how people are divided, fighting about what they believe in, saying mine is bigger, yours is smaller, and all of these things. Again, it has innuendos, but then the internal meaning is about all of this, what people believe in and how they think that is superior to another person's belief. So that is there. Maruti, what did you think about this whole fan war notion?
I have a little difference of opinion with the whole fan war thing. I feel fan wars, I don't know exactly whether the marketing teams are using it that way or it's just working that way. But for sure, fan wars are helping in creating the buzz for a movie in the ground level. Even if the movie is shallow, even if there's no content, even the promotional material is not right, just with this toxic fan war nature of it, there's a lot of buzz that is being built up. Okay, so it was working in the favor of the movie. People are, see, end of the day, if you look at from the business perspective, the movie is made like all Telugu movies, all big star movies are made with huge budgets, so they need to recover. Ex hero fans are commenting about why hero, now they are taking it as a prestige issue, and they're making sure the movie is recovering the budgets. There are a lot of movies like that, where fans are just going crazy about the movies, but again, there is a negative side to it, which not a lot of people are talking, as how take Guntur Karam or Devara or Pushpa 2 for that matter. There's a lot of topic conversation about how the directors are making movies for fans. It is to please fans. No, fans are not, or fans or audience or anybody. We are not some dumb people who you can feed anything with our hero and we will watch it. No, there's this movie called Neninte. I think it released around 2007 or 8, starring Ravi Teja, directed by Puri Jagannath. There is a scene where a big established actor in the movie is telling fans, we are we came here to make movies, but because you want this, that, and all, we are trying to make movies to impress you, not to tell a story, and the movies are not working. And why are you struggling or fighting to make our movies more successful when we are giving bad movies? So in a way, that is still relevant with this fan wars. We do want good movies, we want our heroes to do good, and especially there has been this constant thing about how actors, the movies are good, but the actors are not putting enough efforts for the In the past 6 7 years, this is the common point about all the big stars in Telugu industry. But if you look at this year, take Allu Arjun's performance in Pushpa 2, take Mahesh Babu's performance in Guntur Karam. They are trying things out of their way. They are giving everything to the characters. So from the hero side, they are doing it. But when it comes to the content part of it, is when this formula, or oh, this is for this set of audience, this is for fans. Tell the story. Like, fans will definitely enjoy. I think Salar is one such example. I think everything worked in the movie. It's not a compromised product. Yeah, that is my opinion. And guys, it's getting a little too much. I like all the heroes. If we
Right.
don't say we don't like our favorite heroes movie, how will they know? It is about them not repeating the mistake also, right? So fans also should be responsible in that way. If you don't like it, it's okay. Our heroes also do make mistakes.
Yeah, one point to note here is how you brought the whole angle of marketing and the marketing team using these fans and fan wars to the betterment of the film, because fan wars is something that is very constant and common in all the film industries. Take it the Tamil, take it Kannada. All the film industries mostly have these fan wars where you one hero is pitted against the other, even though they aren't personally invested in this. The fans do this, but the way this has been used in the Telugu film industry is definitely something to be noted, because that isn't something we see in the other film industries. You don't see, when a film of Rajnikant is coming, you don't see an opposing star or the fans of the star being used there, and that being used for the marketing of the film. So that is something that you very nicely pointed out. While we talk about that, another big trend in the Telugu film industry, especially, although all the other industries are also jumping on this bandwagon, the Telugu film industry has been working wonders with the re-release trend. Again, involving the fans, because they're the ones who just gather around in huge numbers to watch the film that is at least a decade old or even just a couple of years old. Maruti, you tell me first, because we've been there, we've enjoyed that whole aura. So you tell me, what is this re-release trend, and is it working well? Is it good? Is it bad? What's your take on it?
The release trend, I personally feel, see, there are like not all re-releases are good, but re-releases are fun, man. It's not just about the theatrical experience. It's you reliving the first time you watched that movie. I feel not just me as an audience, all of us, we were so forgiving towards our cinema or whatever. Our goal was not to decode a movie or gauge it very technically, compare it with other industries. We just want to enjoy, and we were so naive, and the movies were actually working that way. So I feel like whenever I personally watch a re-release, I still go with that, me who was this kid who was watching Indra Sena Reddy. I still feel that that is the value that these movies have. It is not just about the experience, it is the nostalgia value. I think it's a good trend. Some bunch of people talking to the producers, we'll have 2 3 releases. But when it comes to the recent movies getting re-released again, I think that's a little overkill. Fine, it just released. I remember how it is.
Right. Janani, what's your take on it?
I mean, I absolutely love the re-release because there are a lot of films that re-released in Chennai, where I'm staying currently. But then a handful of films worked majorly, and Gilly was one of them, and Varnamairam was another one. Even Varnamairam released in Telugu as Surya, son of Krishnan, and did excellently well. So these are all the films that actually touched people on a very deeper level. And when you evoke that nostalgia and when you watch it with the community, like them uttering the same dialogues or them singing the songs that you actually grew up on, it's a very therapeutic experience, is what a re-release was for me.
Because even when I went for these re-releases, be it the Telugu film Salar or even Indra, the whole
Mm.
aura of the fans over there was just beautiful to watch, because you can even, especially when you're talking about Indra, Chiranjeevi's Indra, it's not that I've watched the film or it has any connections to me personally at a nostalgic level since I'm from Karnataka. I could feel the happiness among the fans and how they felt whenever iconic scenes came up, and how happy they were to see it. Similarly, Jackie, a Kannada film starring Puneet Rajkumar, the late Puneet Rajkumar, also re-released, and Maruti was there to witness how the people from Karnataka, the Kannada people, were just enjoying seeing their favorite star who they unfortunately can't see anymore on the big screen once again. So this trend is definitely working well because it is banking on the nostalgia and the happiness of the fans who want to enjoy it once again. Again, while this is the mass films, one particular film that I really enjoyed and was very happy to watch on the big screen once again is the Hindi film Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. Although it was a very peaceful and decent, it's not a fanfare film. It was a very peaceful watch for me. So this trend is actually working well, in my opinion, as well as in the opinions of Maruti and Janani. Since I'm talking about my personal favorite, let's start here. Maruti, you tell me which was your personal favorite re-release watch that you did in 2024?
I think for me it is Mahesh Babu's Murari. Murari, even in my wildest dreams, I never thought, because I've been watching re-release. There's Okkadu, Pokiri. There's all this action films, full mass masala films re-releasing in theaters. But Murari is a very cute family movie. It's like that full low fluff movie. So when that movie is releasing, I was like, Murari release. I definitely was excited. I wanted to watch it in theater. But I was like, how will people be excited? Because I don't know. But I saw small babies, families. I like, I think I told you when we went to cover re-release only, there's this mom, like, who's I think in her 35s or something with her child. Like, when I watched this movie, it's so cute. They had this moment of watching that movie with family. I think that was so special. That whole experience was so special of how a normal family drama, cute movie.
Janani, what about you?
Mine, I would be Gilly actually, because Gilly was something that I watched when I was in school, and then now, like so many years later, I again went with my school friend and my mother. So there too, like I knew the dialogues by heart. I knew the songs, and then the theater owners also played to the gallery because they played Appadi Podu twice. So it was just a whole, such an enjoyable experience to actually, as a group, like utter the same dialogues at once, and then, enjoy Vijay and Trisha, and Prakash Raj was an absolute hoot there. And then, so that
So
was
now,
my best re-release here, I mean, of this year.
I think, assuming that yours is ZNMDY,
Huh.
Because it's just an escape. While, yeah, there are a lot of mass films that I would love to watch on the big screens and all of it. My experience with ZNMT was totally different because every time I watch the film, it feels a little transient. It feels like an escape from whatever is happening. And, it's a dream world, that a dream that I personally would love to do. Nice French trip, a bachelor's party in Spain. Who wouldn't want it? I definitely want it. So it's in a way aspirational as well. It's a little escape as well. And to watch it on the big screen with the brilliant cinematography was once again beautiful. While talking about this, Janani mentioned Gilly as her favorite film. So, for people who haven't still watched it, Maruti and I have made a comparison video between Okkadu and Gilly, and the video is on India Today So South, the channel. The link of the video will be pinned to the comments. So, if you'd like to watch it, go check that out too. With that, let's move on to the Tamil film industry from here. That industry particularly had a lot of anticipation this year. There was a lot of big films. There were sequels. There were anticipated directors making films. It was not just about the hero. And also, a hero is almost at the end of his career, which he says it is. So, that emotional value has also been there this year. But has it all translated into delivering good films is a big question. Well, Janani, let's start with you. How was Tamil cinema in 2024?
Tamil cinema in 2024 was all about these small budget films, barring a few exceptions for me. And Sivakarthikeyan Samaran was one of the best films of this year for me as well. But apart from that, if you pick, I would rate all these small budget films as much more superior to the ones that had a lot of anticipation. be it Lover Pandu or Lover for that matter. The story and the screenplay are what mattered, reiterating the fact that the content is what drives the film and not the just the star power or the big budget or the marketing as well. So that way, I would see rate this year as a year that actually gave a lot of voice to these upcoming aspirational directors. Take, for example, Kottukali by Vinod Raj. His film, like his previous film, Kurangal, which is called Pebbles, in that did a lot of rounds in the festival circuit, and even in the second film, Kottukali, even that went to a lot of international festival. I feel that film deserved a lot of love, even though it had a very limited theatrical release for all the right reasons, because Sivakarthikeyan as a presenter felt that this deserved a limited release because of its very, open-ending, climax. So this year was more about those films getting the voice that it deserved among the audience.
Maruti, what's your take on Tamil films in 2024?
Overall, I really like the small budget films. I will not call them small budget films. The movies that surprised me with the experience. These kind of movies, because even Vaazhai for that matter, I really enjoyed watching the movie because it's not a small budget movie. Mari
Yeah.
Selvaraj movie, so the anticipation is there. But in terms of experience, I think these movies, Meragan, all these movies. But in a way, I'm actually sad with 2024 performance of Tamil cinema because, in comparison to other industries, I am somebody who actually, more than hero, director motivates me to build excitement towards a film. And somebody who grew up watching Tamil movies, I'll not call them old age, but the outdatedness was a little on the face this time. Take Shankar's Indian 2 or, the way Goat performed. Maybe it can completely be with something with my expectations. I might be totally there. But I feel they actually delivered amazing films, and this year, it was so disappointing from my side to see them giving underwhelming products.
Yes, while there were all these big films, namely Tangalan, Captain Miller, Indian 2, there was Kanguva, Vettayan also to some extent. All these films, although are big in nature with big stars and big budgets, it didn't manage to create the same or get the same response as it built before the release. At the same time, films like Mayadagan, like you said, Karthi and Arvind Swamy, what a beautiful film. It just leaves you happy with a big smile on your face. So, what is this contrast between the big budget and the small budget films? Janani, let's dive a little deeper into that.
Lover Pandu is my absolute favorite this year. Lover, for that matter, as well. It had a very, I wouldn't call it niche, like how modern day relationships are. Kotkali was another favorite as well. And I don't know if many of them would have watched Raghutata. Like, even though there were like a few portions of it which I didn't like, but it was a film that was enjoyable for the most part. Coming to the bigger budget films that probably didn't work at all for me were Indian 2 and Kanguva. These two had like major drawbacks. With Indian 2, it just went to a place where there is no redemption. Like, the only thing that excited me was the trailer of Indian 3 that was shown in the climax, because other than that, the ideas were outdated. Anything that could actually capitalize on what the 1996 film was, which was iconic, they just failed there. They just failed there. These are some stuff that didn't work. Vetain also didn't. It was neither a TJ Gnanavel film. It was neither a Rajnikant film. It was like lingering somewhere in between. And directors who are like have years of experience could have like paid attention to, so that it doesn't end up where it is today.
Right. Maruti, what's your take on this?
See, the big budget or small budget movies, the funda is pretty simple this year, especially. There's a pattern if you notice, okay? So the movies which had clarity on what is the purpose and what they're trying to do worked. You take all these big budget movies, take Tangalan for example, or Goat for example, or Kanguva for example. So the ideas on paper look very exciting. I agree, I get it. when you're mounting the film, I know for a fact even I will be excited if this is my story. But the clarity of what and how much is something that they lost. Because especially with Tangalan, Captain Miller, you take these movies and understand there is a very mystical element for Tangalan, which is not the regular a theme that you choose for a story like that. Or take all the Kanguva also, the contrast that they were trying to do. Or the goat, like, the family man kind of thing also, a little humorous guy also, and a serious mission also. So I feel all the big budget movies lacked clarity in what they want by the end of it. Even Indian too, for that matter, the clarity was the major thing. So the film itself is so not clear about what it is trying to say or show. It doesn't give anything to audience. Why, like the 2.5 of hours of experience is totally nullified. So I think that played a very major reason. And why, in contrast with Mari Selvaraj, I think that's the beauty of it. I had that problem, a little problem with Mamanan movie also. The first half was really good, but so that's the same problem. But if you take one, you know what the movie is about, despite of lot of points that everybody has about Vare, I feel like the clarity is in place. So even Vidudalai Part 2, the recent one which it released also, if you look at Part 1 and Part 2, it feels like two different directors handled the movie. So the clarity of what the filmmaker is trying to say or show, it didn't translate onto big screen. I think that's the major reason, according to me.
Yes, I also second that with all the Tamil films that I watched, most of them which, had these mixed to negative reviews and reaction from the audience is because of a confusion, very evident confusion on the screenplay. It felt like, although on paper it might sound like a very interesting plot point, while executing it, it felt like either there were too many hands on the dish, or it was a big letdown for me when I watched Indian 2, and the very iconic martial art used in Indian became a point of joke in the
Big
second part.
joke.
And that choices made by filmmakers are something that, really pull down the potential that all the Tamil films this year had. Take it Tangalan, that while the film was going in a particular direction, they just suddenly turn it towards the British versus India angle, oppressor versus oppressed angle, while it was taking a very nice mystical approach to it. And then again, let's not talk about Kanguva and Indian 2 anymore. Another thing I noticed is, for example, take Goat and Kanguva, the cliffhangers are there as well. Indian 2 too. Cliffhangers were there as well. Do
Yeah.
you feel like the end product was, hindered because of this approach once again? Janani, you take it.
With Goat, I wouldn't call it as a cliffhanger. Maybe it was just added to just give the high, because we all know that Vijay is calling it quits, and he has just one more film in his pipeline. So that maybe I wouldn't call it as a like a conscious decision to mount a sequel there, but to just give the high, like give people the high, that so that when they leave the theater, they just go thinking that someday this can be made as well. But with Indian 2 and Kangua, I do understand the fact that this could have actually, there are a lot of portions that could have actually been trimmed, and then and the story could have actually, added to the screenplay than concentrating on these redundant storylines. So that I felt was a major issue here as well.
Another thing in the Tamil film industry is the portrayal of sensitive issues. You again, you see a lot of it in any Tamil film given the years as well. But this year, it seemed like that was the major point of conflict in most films. What is your take on this, Janani?
I did a piece on how sexual violence is actually portrayed in Tamil films in recent times. And I felt Maharaja, even though it was a big hit and it's still doing very well in China, it's gonna hit 100 crore. I felt that sexual violence, which was not dealt with sensitively. Like, people who ever watch a film, uh, who watched it, it was triggering for a lot of women who watched Maharaja because of the repeated visuals of, the victim. And same case with Vetain as well. We know Dushara is sexually abused, but then, the director took the approach to actually show the scene how she is assaulted over and over again just to evoke that shock among the audience, which is something that right now, when there is actually a conversation that is building on how sexual harassment is prevalent in workplaces everywhere, and then there is a conversation building on how these should be, showcased in films. Right now, I think directors could actually put in that extra effort to show that scene. Last year when Sai Pallavi's Gargi released, it sort of, had a very sensitive take on how the violence is portrayed. So these are something that I wish that could actually change in coming future. Same thing with the caste-based politics. Even though the politics is something that we could understand. Take Vidudalai, for example. Vidudalai is a film that is, I consider, as a handbook for communism. So for those films, going and understanding it on a deeper level is something that the audience could use it. So these are the films that could actually, bring that sort of visuals to them. But criticizing these films have also become hard these days, because when you look at it at a cinematic angle, people, it might not be a great movie, but maybe its politics is good. Like same happened with Tangalan. The politics of Tangalan is so good, but then when you criticize it, it is taken as a, you know, when you criticize it, it's something that people consider it very
It's taken
personal.
as a criticism of the politics and not the film.
Yeah. So when you criticize a film of, that addresses caste discrimination or injustice, it's taken as a criticism on the director or his ideology only. So that's something that could have been like changed. I would look forward for it to change in 2025.
Maruti, what is your take on it?
In terms of representation, I see merit in what Janani spoke in terms of the sensitivity of handling. But my personal opinion is, in general, there are different ways of different filmmakers and different ideas to show something. So it's very, very difficult to, because a lot of times what happens is that if you don't show, like the call of how you show it, very subjective, especially in terms of a voice and a filmmaker. It becomes very subjective. Sometimes it's just a underlying theme, and it feels very forced. There are a lot of movies that released this year also where they used this angle of abuse just as an angle, just for the sake of it. Yeah, this is the point, so let's put that also. Like it's like a tick mark also. So it is very sensitive, yes, but subjective also. I feel with Maharaja, a trigger warning, like a very proper trigger warning, would be much
Oh,
appreciated. Than
yeah.
because we really can't say, maybe some people might actually the experience it as subjective, right? So in that
Yeah.
aspect, I feel the trigger warning should be more in place rather
Yeah.
than, yeah. I feel that is my
Yeah.
opinion. Again, I might, yeah. And with the caste-based politics and the movies related to that, right? The behavior, see, a lot of people, see, I completely don't agree when people say that, Tamil cinema is doing that, these people are ruining industry. Paranjit, Vetrimaran, Mari Selvaraj, they're not doing anything. They are telling their stories. It is cinema. You always have option to choose not to watch if you have a problem with that. I don't have any problem. I like watching those movies. I'll watch. You don't, but they're ruining the cinema. No, no, I completely disagree with that kind of arguments. But again, see the toxic fans also, right? See, toxic fans in general, you take any hero, any movie, they will defend to the core if they like something or somebody. In a way, when I was in college, like a lot of people found Vadachennai in Telugu states a little slow and boring. Okay, I am like, bro, just go. I am judging you all your films. You get the point, right? So there is, I understand where they are coming from, but again, when it is also important for everybody to understand that, how you are cinematically communicating something. Like Janani beautifully mentioned about how Tangalan's politics is on point, but cinematically, is it really good? Because cinema is not just about Tangalan, it's not just about politics, right? It is about performance, it is about world building, characters, characterization, screenplay, story. It is a cinema, politics. So the beautiful blend is when it'll actually work, Suran. There are a lot of movies, and it's not just me, a lot of Tamil YouTubers also talk about this. How, too much it becomes after a point.
Well, yeah, that is definitely the feeling. One thing that Janani mentioned in the conversation is that there is a need for a sensitive approach for triggering issues. And yes, while I agree with that, I also see a trend, not just in Tamil or Telugu, or this trend is quite, common across industries, is that there is an acceptance and, a kind of excitement when a film is gory. For example, the recent Marco, the Malayalam film, the way that is working out for its extremely gore action content, be it Kill in Hindi or Animal, for example. Tangalan also to an extent, Captain Miller to a huge extent. There is a lot of gory content that could be triggering, but then that is also a point of, marketing, a point which sells tickets as well. So there is a clear contradiction between wanting things to be a little sensitive and also the kind of tickets that sold when the content is a little more gory, to say the least about it.
I love Kill basically. So it's about how the film is actually marketed. Like with Kill, they just went all out saying this is the most violent film. All you can expect is John Wick types violence here. So you come in for that and you get the full bucks for it. So I'm all in for those films as in. But my point was mainly for the sexual harassment thing, which everybody needs to look in seriously. And I wouldn't mind Marco as well because, when you are marketing it as a film that sells violence, I would look for violence in the film because that is what you are promising. So you give me that, and I would be very happy, more than happy to actually, look forward to in what you guys have promised. So that's something that I believe in.
Well, personally, since I am from Bangalore, I honestly feel like the last 2 years, 2023 and 24, have been a little on the lower side for the Kannada industry because there hasn't been consistent films by the bigger stars, and the younger ones have not been able to carry it consistently. There, especially if you talk about 2024, there were no Shetties this year. All the big films came at the very end, the last week of October, and since then, all the big films released. Until then, it was all the smaller films which didn't really make the mark. The only film, only there were three films which hit the double digit in terms of box office, which was Yuva with Yuva Rajkumar, his debut, the grandson of Dr. Rajkumar. Other than that, there was Krishnam Pranayasaki by Ganesh and then Bhima by Vijay, Dunia Vijay. But apart from these films, no other film made the mark until, the start of Martin and then onwards. Martin came in Dasara, October 10th to be specific. Again, bad reviews, didn't make as much as it would, but the big star brought in a certain amount of people into the theaters. Again, came Sri Murli, Shivraj Kumar, and all the other films came in later. So, Maruti, let's start with you. What is your perspective since you also stay in Bengaluru and you know the market now since you've been working for a couple of years? What is your take on this?
Every year, take any industry for that matter, there'll be like good movies, like, the theatrical movies, 10, where people will storm into theaters. And the other movies, based on the talk, people will, it's like that Friday and that weekend, you get to know what is the fate of that movie. But this year, the movies were good, okay. I really like Bhima. So all these movies, I felt like, considering the quality and the reviews and word of mouth, I thought people will storm into theaters at least once, at least some people, But looking at the response of it, I was really surprised. Not in terms of filmmakers, are usually when the year is underwhelming for films, right? You talk about filmmakers or the kind of content that release. But I think this year is a very weird year in terms of audience. Even after UI, Bhairati Ranagal, all these movies released also, like I spoke to a lot of Kannadigas personally, and I thought, guys, I'm an outsider. I am telling you these movies are good. Why are you not going to theaters? I don't know. People just, these are all big stars also. Looking at the numbers of UI and Max also, considering the Max, it's a beautiful movie. It really works. It has all of it. But looking at the response of audience, it's really surprising why.
Janani, since you have consumed Kannada cinema over the years, you've seen a lot of films. 2022 was a beautiful year for the industry because there was KGF 2, there was Kantara, which blew up nationwide. But also, along with it, there were a lot of other films, Puneet Rajkumar films, there was Darshan's films. All of these were also keeping the box office running, bringing huge numbers into the theaters and all of it. But then lately, that hasn't been the scene. What is your take on this?
So, compared to 2022 and 2023, I personally didn't watch a lot of Kannada films this year, probably because there were very limited release here, one. And then, these big budget films, except for UI and Max, I couldn't see any, and Bhairati Ranangal as well. I couldn't see the other films actually transcending from Karnataka to the other states of India. So that is one thing that actually made a world of difference in Kannada cinema when compared to 2022 to 2024. Probably, I think that bridge will be that gap will be bridged in 2025 with a lot of films lined up. So that is one thing that I actually thought of.
Good point bringing 2025 into the topic because a lot of bigger stars, namely even Sudeep, has promised to bring at least two films in the year. Yash's
Yeah.
Toxic could be releasing in 2025. It was,
Yes.
scheduled to release in April, but then
April.
evidently it has been delayed. It might release at the very end of the year. A couple of Shivraj Kumar films is also up there. There is also the Shetty films that will be
Kantara.
coming in 2025, which is why all the anticipation for the from the industry, especially for 2025, is high. But then, is it okay to depend on only these people? Will the younger stars come forward? What will happen if that doesn't happen is a big question that is lingering in my mind as well. And all the younger stars who are trying their very best have been failing as well. They're not able to make people come out of their houses and enter the theater screens. How will it affect on the long run? Maruti, what do you think?
This will affect the industry for sure because, see, no matter how much I spoke about audience and them not showing this interest, that is definitely there. That is the reason why me and Sanjay, when we in our review videos also, we try our level best to tell audience that, please come to theaters and watch movies. But in the longer run, the point is there'll be no stars or actors or the people who has that crowd. See, or Shivraj Kumar or all these stars, they actually grew up to that stature. They initially started giving movies, there's a certain amount of investment expectations that gives the quality, all of that's right. So now that thing is clearly missing. And also, if you look at how Shetty's blew up, also both Rakshit, Rishabh, and Rajbi Shetty, the cinema, the experience is different. So these younger actors also should pick those kind of movies. It goes hand in hand, right? Because if you don't give them enough content or make them feel that, yeah, we should come and watch this movie, they will not. So it's not that people are not interested. The content or the choices of scripts or the movies that are in general being made, not able to create the interest which is giving that whole overall straight line to the industry where, even if there is a good movie or somebody is talking about the movie also, this is what it will be. There is that kind of notion that I can clearly see among people. The people are not talking about movies. See, when people are talking about movies, there is some anticipation as when they'll come into the theater, right? So the production teams also should put more efforts in terms of creating conversations about cinema. Again, conversations is not fan wars or whose hero is big or not. There is a lot of interest in that angle. Yeah, yeah. Everywhere, everybody has their own hero. They are the bigger. But when it comes to theaters, that is not reflective.
Another thing to notice here is since Bengaluru is the major city for Karnataka, which holds a lot of theater screens, but then there is a Bengaluru as a city, as a metropolitan city, has become very diverse. And then again, there is market for all languages. At the same time, the market for Kannada films is getting smaller and smaller. Is this something that will impact majorly? Because if you look at Hyderabad per se for Telugu films, there is a majority of Telugu audience there who would go and watch the films in theaters. Take Tamil, Chennai as their major city. Most of the people there are Tamilians and they will support their films as well. Is this a particular major reason for Kannada films to be struggling since Bengaluru, their major market, being so diverse and then most films and theaters not having that kind of either release and also the people who would want to come and watch? Janani, what is your take on this?
Not having enough release, does really affect a film in the longer run. But even for that, I mean, if you consider that, or if you leave out that aspect, there is a strong section called OTT. For me, I never knew how Dia would be until it came on OTT, and people actually glued up to it. Even in our office, people in Chennai hardly knew how Yuva Ratna would be. But then when it released on OTT, they were still glued to it. So not having this is a problem, but then if the content is good, it would actually pick up at least on OTT through word of mouth or through how much ever marketing you do. But not having that kind of leverage is certainly worrying when it comes to the script level, is what I think.
Another thing to be picked up here is the marketing of the films because a lot of these smaller films aren't really marketed enough. Like Maruti Acharya rightfully pointed out that people aren't really talking about films, and that is where promotional activities kick in. It has been very traditional, to say the least, in the Kannada film fraternity, the kind of promotional approach they pick, especially since you're a smaller film. You need to have a very good promotional strategy just to make sure that everybody knows what this film is about. A good example that I'd like to bring in here is the promotional campaign of the film Hostel Hudugaru Bekagiddare. Right from the get-go, which released last year in 2023, two great reviews, did wonderful in the Kannada theaters in Kannada, also got a release in Telugu and did fairly good there as well. The kind of promotional strategy they chose right from the get-go, from the first puja of the film to the way Puneet Rajkumar clapped and the way they used him in their promotional campaign, to everything they did right up till the release of the film. It was just beautiful, and you could see that if promotional activities are done right, the smallest of films can get the biggest reception from the Kannada audience. So do you think that the promotional game of Kannada filmmakers need to step it up?
I think definitely there is more room for promotions because if dubbing movies with their kind of promotions, because we've been extensively covering, right? I know what kind of promotions the other movies are doing in Karnataka or Bangalore for that matter, but the buzz is still there. So it's not just about being visible, it's about creating curiosity. So in that aspect, there's a lot of scope. The Hostel Huduguru is a very good example that Sanjay brought in here, is because I want to know what this movie is about. That is one way that you go to watch a movie. So big star movies, right? So take Bhairati Ranagal or Max. The promotions of the movie, if you look at it, if I am somebody, I'm a Kannada audience. The movie released, I know, okay, there's a Sudeep movie in theaters. Maybe over a weekend, I'll plan to go and watch it. The movie released, all that I know is people are liking it. Do you really think just the word that, all the public reactions, all of that, do you think that is enough for an audience to create curiosity? Absolutely not. The movie is good, the content is good, people are talking about it, all of it. But there is something more which would make me feel like I want to watch what is this? I want to know why they're liking. Hey, Kantara, that's the reason, right? Oh, there is something in the movie why everybody is excited. I don't know what is that. Or the other way, with Hostel Guru, what they did. There is I want to know what these people did. With when Shetty Films releases, right, the first question that comes to our mind is what they did. I want to see what they're doing this time. Even Saptasagar Dachiyallo, it is the most unconventional movie. Like somebody like Sanjay, we both went to watch it together, and I know what kind of movie Sanjay watch. That sad, little melodramatic, slow movies is not something that he prefers. But definitely that curiosity of, I want to know what they did. I don't know what is there in the movie. So it is very important for young filmmakers and promotional campaigns to understand that putting the movie is good or that is different from creating the curiosity. So there's a lot of scope in that direction and work that is needed, according to me.
I would take, this Sudeep's film Max for that example. It is actually produced by a Tamil producer, but here I am in Chennai, but not many know that a Sudeep film has released also. And taking Kannada cinema as an example, like you don't need to go all out in promotions like how the Bollywood does. Even for that matter, Kanguva is a Tamil film, but it was more promoted in Hindi because they gravitated towards the pan India approach. But it is those small videos or small, like a poster or some sort of small, on a smaller level, like you plan the campaign on a smaller level, because we do know that there are budget constraints, there are constraints in you reaching out to a larger audience without the backing of a solid producer or an OTT giant or anything. But your these smaller videos where you actually like pick the curiosity of the people, those work accordingly. So you, like any filmmaker for that matter, you can invest on those ideas that could actually convey the USP of your product, which would actually take Kannada cinema to people who don't know.
One of Kannada industry's biggest stars, arguably the biggest box office draw right until Yash became KGF's Rocky Bhai, was Darshan Togudipa, and his arrest took away a lot of attention, and it was more about what is happening in his case than what was happening in the theaters throughout the year. What do you think about this? Audiences investing more on the stars and what is happening in their personal life than the kind of films that is releasing in theaters. Janani, you tell me.
So it's actually very saddening for a Kannada cinema as a whole, because in 2022 and 23 as well, there were a lot of Kannada films that actually went to a larger audience. And to see that 2024 was about Darshan and how his fans, you know, invested on his personal life or how the controversy turned out, and not actually supporting the actual cinema that is coming out, it's quite saddening. And then, it just dampens the morale of the filmmakers in Kannada cinema.
Sanjay initially spoke about how Darshan films, or for that matter, late Mr. Puneet Rajkumar movies, they were crowd pullers. Okay. So, irrespective of whether the movie is good or not, is secondary. Family audience, especially the major chunk which contributes to the revenue. The film buffs is this part in if you look at audience like this, okay. So this is film and this is family audience. So if family audience connect with a movie, right, the movie will commercially do well. So Puneet Rajkumar and Darshan's movies had that pull in terms of audience, and due to the situations that we are in right now, it is a little sad that that audience pull is definitely something which is missing, and the fact that they had that pull and nobody tried to capitalize or try to build it to that level, other younger bunch, is the fact that we don't have people who have that family audience pull.
Well, all in all, the year 23 and 24 has evidently been a little on the lower side for the Kannada film industry, and with hopes for a better 2025. It was very evident that, the how much the industry misses stars like Punit Rajkumar or even stars like Yash when he's on his long extended break looking for the right script. How much, since the Shetties, the RRR of the Kannada film industry blew up, how much their lack of films in the theaters is also pointed out. Along with it, even when stars like Sudeep is missing from the theaters, when Darshan is in his, not able to give out films, to say the least about it, there is going to be a huge void that evidently is not being able to fill by the younger generation. Because although the only person who showed any sort of promise this year is Yuva Rajkumar, who managed to bring a certain amount of crowd and a certain amount of box office. But then there is still a long way to go for him as well to get established. It remains to be seen whether Yuva Rajkumar could be a big star to come in the following years. Well, that is what has been happening in the Kannada film industries. We've spoken about all the industries in as much detail as possible. An elaborate discussion this certainly was, but it was also a very informative one. I hope a lot more directors get the limelight here. Speaking about Kannada industry, I'm really looking forward to another Hemant Rao film after Sapta. I'm looking forward to a Nartan delivering a mass, taking into consideration all the negatives from Bhairati Ranagal, because he also seems to be someone who is capable of delivering films, or, you know, bring that mass aura like Prashant Neel did with KGF and Salar. I hope Prashant Neel returns to the Kannada industry soon as well. I understand what he is trying to say and all of it, but I hope he brings a little more Kannada content as well. With all those hopes, I hope all the other younger directors get their due, uh, and they break out into the scene with a lot more promising content with the smaller films as well. Because 2023 was a year for smaller films in Kannada. This year it wasn't that as well. So let's see what happens. Fingers crossed for 2025. Thank you for joining in and giving so much of your time, Maruti Acharya and Janani. With that, signing off for the year 2024, I am Sanjay Ponnappa for India Today.